You know what Sonic Mania had going for it, that's been missing from a lot of the recent mainline Sonic games? If you answered, actually good game design, then congratulations! You just won the Obvious Joke Award! No. The thing Mania has going for it is having multiple playable characters to choose from, as opposed to the mainline games, which give you a grand choice of Sonic, or Toontown OC? Okay, I'm ripping into it, but the character creator actually is a step in the right direction. It's just a shame that the rest of the Sonic cast have gone so neglected. Yeah, you can play as Shadow in Forces 2, but that's only because he plays the same as Sonic. What's neat about the Sonic Mania characters is that each of them have their own special abilities, ranging from flight, to gliding, to being hard as hell. Each character having their own unique ability means that they each have their own playstyle, so are guaranteed to have a different experience of the game depending on which one you pick. And the question for the day is, which of these characters is the best to play as? I'm going to answer this question by ranking each character based on the following criteria. What benefits does their ability bring to the game? And just as important, how fun are these abilities to use? But before I start, I just want to make it clear that just because a character was on the lower end of the list, doesn't mean that I dislike them. In fact, I think 4 of these characters are great. Every time I boot up the game I struggle to pick between these 4 characters, because the 4 of them each have such cool abilities that enhance the gameplay in such unique ways. Yep, I'm glad we got such a rich and diverse selection of characters between just these 4. Anyways, without further ado, onto the list. This guy sucks and I hate him. I hate how he looks like some lame Sonic and Tails hybrid, and I'm glad Sega ignored him for 24 years. I wish I could ignore his presence in Mania too. He's just that awful. Is how I used to feel about Ray, before I realised I was playing as him completely wrong. See, Ray's ability is that he can glide by pressing left and right whilst in the air. Pulling forward will cause Ray to dive, whereas pulling backwards will leave him floating, and you have to alternate between these 2 positions to get him to glide forwards. But I completely screwed this up. I did not realise that you were supposed to press left and right to get him to switch. I thought you were supposed to press up and down. So basically when I played, I would just be furiously toggling the stick up and down, having no idea why the glide never worked. Either Ray would just quickly nosedive to the ground, or he'd just be slowly floating through the air with his head in the clouds, happily ignoring me as I furiously mashed my control stick. Honestly, I even got stuck on that Angel Island level for several minutes, because I couldn't figure out how to jump up that cliff at the end. Yep, I felt like a pretty big fool when I found out that I was playing as Ray wrong. Mac Monkey Hat? More like Mac Dunce Hat. Oh well, it doesn't really matter, I still managed to beat the game with Ray despite having no idea how to use him. But now that I've had an opportunity to play as him and actually know what I'm doing, I can confidently say that gliding as Ray can be extremely satisfying when you can pull it off. Soaring through the air as Ray feels more earned than it does with Tails and Knuckles because it requires more input from the player to pull off. And when you get going, you can rack up some great speed. I probably take more pleasure in performing this move than the average person, just because I didn't understand how to do it for so long. But the key phrase there is when you can pull it off. Because if you hit a wall or a badnik, your glide is all over. And with the way these levels are designed, you'll be doing that a lot. With the Knuckles glide, it usually didn't matter if you collided with something, because Knuckles would either destroy it or climb up it. But with Ray, if you hit something, you'll come crashing down. And the further down the map you are, the harder it is to gain the height needed to glide again. So, whilst Ray's glide does feel gratifying, it doesn't really allow the player to do much more than what they could already do with Tails or Knuckles, which is why I had to rank Ray at number 5. Okay, I feel bad about putting the 2 new characters as the bottom 2. I should just be happy they added any additional characters at all. Please don't let this list deter you from adding cream and cheese to Sonic Mania 2. But Mighty actually is a character that I'm super grateful for, because playing as him helps to negate one of the biggest annoyances I've always had with the classic Sonic games. I've always hated how sometimes it's near impossible to gather speed in a level, because every time you get going, a projectile flies at you out of nowhere, or you'll run straight into some spikes. And there isn't enough time to react and avoid these things because it's all coming at you too quickly. But Mighty's hard shell does a lot to alleviate that annoyance by deflecting physical projectiles and giving you one free hit against spikes. And that little bit of extra legroom can make all the difference. Playing as Mighty is sort of like playing the game on an easier difficulty. In the same way people feel that Tails' flight makes him the easy mode. Both of their abilities allow you to learn the lay of the stages, whilst having some extra protection against their hazards. But I think Mighty is actually more practical as a learning tool, because you're having to run through the whole level in the same way Sonic would. Neither of them can just fly past everything. You can basically do a test run with Mighty before doing the more challenging Sonic run. Mighty's hammer drop is also an interesting change of pace from all the other characters' mid-air moves. For the other characters, their mid-air abilities offer them an alternate form of movement, or some forward momentum. For Sonic, his spin drop allows him to quickly speed along, and for the others, their mid-air abilities grant them aerial movement. Mighty, however, is the only character whose mid-air move brings him to a complete stop, which could be useful if you quickly need to hit the emergency brake. Also, that shockwave it generates does help to get some usually tougher to reach enemies. The hammer drop does help to open some alternate pathways in Encore mode, but none of them are really as substantial as the Knuckles paths. In fact, the path Mighty opens in Green Hill is literally just the Knuckles route. Plus, the appeal of the Knuckles paths is that they're designed specifically with Knuckles gliding and climbing in mind, whereas all of Mighty's routes in Encore mode have to be designed so they can be navigated by all the other characters as well, since you can switch between all the characters at any time. The only path that can only be travelled through as Mighty is the Angel Island route, and that only lasts for like all of 2 seconds. It's also a shame that Mighty didn't retain his wall jump from Knuckles Chaotix, but I guess it would have been difficult to combine it with the hammer drop, just like it's difficult to combine Mighty with the rest of the Chaotix. Apparently. Okay, if this list was based on how much I like these characters' personality and appearance, Tails would be number 1. He's super adorable, spinning his tails to fly is a clever concept, and I always related to him being the underestimated younger sidekick. So why does he only rank as my 3rd favourite to play as? Well, I do think flying around as Tails can be extremely useful. It offers you an extra safety net, and a way to more freely explore stages. Areas that Sonic would only have a limited window of time to reach can be easily flown to by Tails at his own leisure. Plus, those helicopter blades of his can be ruthless, making fast work of chopping through bosses. But I do have a couple of issues with the way Tails' flight is utilised. For one thing, sometimes flying around as Tails can be a little dull. You're never in much danger when you fly, and it's pretty easy to skip over most of the level while doing it. But you could argue that Tails' flight being dull is intentional, as it can discourage the player from being overly reliant on it. But my main issue with Tails' ability is that it doesn't bring as much to the game as Sonic and Knuckles' abilities do. Yeah, you can use it to navigate stages more easily, but everywhere Tails can go can be reached by other characters if you're a skilled enough player. If Tails had some alternate routes that could only be accessed by flying, maybe in some Tails Skypatrol inspired sections, I might be singing a different tune. But as it is, Tails is a neat character that feels like he has some missed potential. Knuckles and Tails are kinda similar in that both of their abilities allow the player to explore stages more easily, giving them aerial movement and more leeway in which paths they take. But I prefer Knuckles' glide because it manages to do this without feeling completely overpowered in the way that Tails' flight does. Gliding as Knuckles allows you to fly over the stage, but you don't have full omnidirectional control over it. You're always slowly descending, so it's not as easy to skip over challenging sections as it is with Tails. Knuckles can scale the level by climbing, but there has to be a wall present, and he's vulnerable to being hit when doing so, with the only method of protecting himself being to jump away from the wall. Basically, playing as Knuckles is like a series of trade-offs. You're given a new skill set to work with, but this also comes with its own set of challenges that a player needs to adapt their strategy for. Like, Knuckles having a lower jump may be a drawback, but you can work around this if you utilise his gliding and climbing effectively. But the biggest appeal of this moveset is how it opens up new routes, inaccessible to other characters. This really makes Knuckles stand out amongst the cast. The other 4 all share essentially the same campaign, whereas Knuckles' story has several standout moments unique to him, such as his opening of Green Hill Zone, the first Heavy King fight, and the entirety of Mirage Saloon Act 1. Actually, now that I think about it, Knuckles should be the best character by default, because he's the only one that I don't have to do that slow-ass Sky Chase level with. Wow, you picked Sonic as the best playable character in a Sonic game? That's original. But seriously, Sonic ranks number 1 for one simple reason. His moveset is the most varied. Whilst the other characters all have their abilities set in stone, Sonic has as many as 6 abilities that he can switch between. Obviously the star of the show for most people is the drop dash, which allows you to spin dash straight out of a jump, meaning it's no longer as necessary to stop and charge it. Whilst it was always possible to roll out of a jump, you couldn't really guarantee that you would keep your forward momentum. You'd probably just end up rolling whichever way was downhill. If you wanted to guarantee you'd keep moving forward, you'd have to run normally. But that came with its own set of drawbacks, because you'd be vulnerable if you ran into an enemy. So the drop dash is useful for anyone who wants to speed through a stage, whilst minimising all of the risks that come with that. But Sonic's other abilities also come with their own set of benefits. The insta-shield especially is underrated. It's ideal for getting some extra hits in the boss fights. Making players choose between the drop dash and the insta-shield basically killed the insta-shield's relevance though. There are more circumstances where you're going to want an extra burst of speed over an extended hitbox. I get why they didn't want the player to have access to both the insta-shield and the drop dash at the same time though. They are both mid-air abilities, and the devs probably wanted to keep things simple by only giving Sonic one mid-air ability at a time. The peel out having to be its own separate ability though is questionable, since it's not even activated the same way the drop dash is. The peel out is activated by pressing up whilst grounded, whilst the drop dash is activated by pressing the jump button in the air. Pretty straightforward to have them coexist. Although, to be honest, I don't personally see what the appeal of the peel out is. The spin dash is superior to it in every way, making it pretty redundant. I don't think the peel out being slightly faster is a good trade-off for losing the hitbox the spin dash gives you. But the thing that really puts Sonic's moveset over the top for me are the special abilities the elemental shields give him. It's cool how bringing this Mario-like power-up into the game brings a new layer of strategy to how you play. The shields give the player extra powers, but can also make you more cautious about getting hit. Getting hit in a Sonic game usually doesn't matter too much, because of how easy it is to regather rings for protection afterwards. But losing the elemental shields actually make you feel like you've lost something substantial that can't be regained easily. Of course, the shields would only be worth keeping if they gave you some cool abilities, and luckily, all of the shield abilities are way past that. The electric shield's double jump is probably the most practical, since it gives you more leeway in the air. The flame dash is the closest thing to a homing attack we have in the classic Sonic games. No, I'm not counting that one. And the bubble bounce is just plain satisfying to perform. Woohoo, look at him go, yeah! Getting the shields as the other characters isn't quite as exciting, since none of them get the mid-air abilities. I can appreciate why they don't get the full benefits of the shield. You don't need to stack a double jump on top of Tails' flight, or an air dash on top of Knuckles' glide, but at the same time I do feel like I'm missing out on an aspect of the game when I get the shields as these guys and can't use their abilities. Like, you can only fully appreciate Press Garden if you get the elemental shields as Sonic, because he's the only one that can use their power to destroy those boxes, or easily crash through all that ice. Well, I guess Mighty can do that too with the hammer drop, but you know, it feels more thematically appropriate to do it with the flame shield. If the shield abilities weren't unique to Sonic, he definitely wouldn't have ranked this high. I probably would have put him below Mighty, to be honest. And I do think that gliding as Knuckles or flying as Tails is better than Sonic abilities if you took them all individually. But the fact that Sonic can switch between so many makes him the most versatile and dynamic character to play as, which is why I personally rank him as the best playable character in Sonic Mania.
Geez, Mac, isn't it a little bit ironic that you opened this video with a complaint about how Sonic has been the only playable character in recent Sonic games, only to turn around at the end and say he's your favourite character to play as in Mania?
You're right, Doggy. Maybe I'm just not a good authority to talk about the Sonic characters. I mean, I didn't even know how to control Ray the Flying Squirrel.
Squirrel? Where's a squirrel?
No, Doggy, I don't have a squirrel. No. Doggy, stay away! Stop! No! Doggy, stop!